Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In a small, unassuming town nestled between rolling hills and dense timberland, the sense of safety was as palpable as the scent of pine in the air. Residents went about their lives without a hint of the darkness that would soon emerge from the shadows. The town, with its quaint storefronts and well-kept parks, was the type of place where neighbors exchanged warm smiles and children played freely in the sun. On a quiet Tuesday morning, early October, the serenity of the community was shattered. The local librarian, an elderly woman named Margaret, was found lifeless in the back room of the library or sanctuary, turned crime scene. She was the heart of the town, the one who remembered every local story, every family, and every secret. The chilling discovery sent shockwaves rippling through the town, awakening a gnawing sense of unease. The news traveled quickly, reaching the small precinct where Detective Samuel Roberts had been called in on his day off. As he arrived at the dimly lit library, his gut twisted with a familiar feeling gone that told him this case would haunt him long after the dust settled. Margaret lay crumpled on the floor, her silver hair framing a serene face that starkly contrasted the violence that had taken place. Papers lay strewn about, each adorned with her neat handwriting, remnants of the world she built with stories now forgotten. As the forensic team set to work, the detective felt the weight of the town's expectations bear down on his shoulders. He knew that as he pushed through the layers of lies, he would have to dive deep into the lives of those he once considered friends. This was not merely a case of hearsay. It was a matter of life and death, the unraveling of a tight-knit community thrust into darkness. The victim, Margaret Taylor, was more than just the town librarian. She was its living archive. For 50 years, she had dedicated her life to curating the community's stories. Each book she shelved a testament to her love for knowledge and people. A widow and mother of two, she had spent her twilight years in solitude, her children long since moved away, pursuing careers and adventures far from their childhood home. Yet, she was never truly alone. The steady stream of patrons kept her connected to the pulse of the town. As the coroner examined her body, Detective Roberts meticulously took note of the details surrounding Margaret's final moment. A single bruise marred her temple, stark against her pale skin, a sign of a struggle, perhaps. In that very room, surrounded by the familiar smell of old pages and polished wood, the idea that a violent confrontation had taken place felt inconceivable. Reporting to the precinct, Robert sifted through Margaret's life, each article and title revealing the simple joys she valued: gardening, chess, and reading to children during story hours. But it wasn't merely her hobbies that caught the detective's attention. There was something about her dwindling social circles, whispers among former friends about her growing reclusive nature. A few had alluded to a darker shadow trailing behind her fallout with a group of community members, long unspoken. Intrigued and slightly unsettled, Roberts reached out to those closest to her, filing through the town's collective memory, one name at a time. As he delved deeper, he uncovered a tapestry woven with threads of envy and resentment, secrets lurking beneath the surface of the seemingly tranquil town. With each conversation, he felt the weight of Margaret's absence echoing through its empty spaces. She had been the anchor of many lives, and now that anchor was gone, leaving a riptide of unanswered questions. The crime scene, the library's interior, had always held a certain charm, a sanctuary of quiet contemplation, but now it felt like a mausoleum, cloaked in somber hues of injustice. Detective Roberts stepped gingerly across the threshold, his senses heightened. Every creak of the old wooden floorboard echoed like a ghostly whisper of what had transpired mere hours before. The crime scene was still fresh, the pungent scent of forensic spray lingering in the air like a harsh reminder of the morning's horrors. Margaret lay sprawled beneath a bright overhead lamp, her body arranged in an almost serene manner except for the bruising that betrayed the peace. A meticulously organized desk now bore the marks of chaos, papers fluttering like wounded birds scattered in the aftermath of a tempest. Roberts observed the details intently. The overturned chairs were displaced, as if a struggle had swept through the room. He noted the stacks of books resting on the shelvist titles on conflict resolution, the complexities of human nature, perhaps ironic given the circumstances. One book lay conspicuously open on the floor, its pages bent and torn, revealing a plucked line from a passage about betrayal. Was this the moment Margaret had realized she had crossed paths with malice? The forensic team canvassed the area, dusting for fingerprints while focusing on the waiting room, where patrons often gathered. A forgotten coffee cup, the remnants of an unfinished drink, caught Robert's attention. He inspected the rim and noted smudged lip prints, a detail trivial at first glance, yet crucial. It suggested intimacy, a familiarity that disturbed him. Had someone Margaret trusted been with her in those final moments? With each passing minute, the weight of the investigation bore down harder. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows that twisted the once vibrant room into an unsettling gloom. Roberts understood now that they were no longer just looking for a motive. They were delving into the depths of the human soul, where jealousy, anger, and despair intertwined. This investigation was no longer solely about piecing together a crime. It was about unearthing the enigmatic life of a beloved woman who had touched so many, now stripped of her story and waiting to be told again, this time with justice in mind. The early investigation. The morning sun rose begrudgingly, casting a muted light through the library's windows, illuminating the remnants of chaos from the night before. Detective Roberts gathered his thoughts, preparing for a day that promised complexity and sorrow. The small town had awakened to a palpable tension, whispers of speculation weaving through streets like fog. His first stop was the precinct, where he meticulously organized the newfound evidence. The smudged coffee cup had undergone testing for DNA, a vital piece of the puzzle that could link the killer to the scene. Meanwhile, the forensic team had returned with initial findings, no signs of forced entry, suggesting Margaret's attacker was someone she knew, someone she likely trusted. Roberts reached out to locals who frequented the library, eager to gather insights about Margaret and her interactions. The first interview was with Sarah, a college student who had come to rely on Margaret's guidance. Her wide eyes betrayed the shock of losing her mentor. "I never understood why she seemed distant lately," Sarah admitted, her voice trembling. "She just stopped coming to community events, stopped calling us. I thought she was just focused on her books, but now I wonder if she was afraid of something." Encouraged by her honesty, Roberts pressed gently. "Afraid? Did she ever discuss someone in particular?" Sarah hung her head, hesitating before speaking again. There was a falling out with some of her book club members. They argued about a town projector renovation that Margaret opposed. I think it got heated as Sarah shared more details. Roberts noted a pattern forming in the community's veins, a simmering resentment, tightly leashed until unleashed by one person's disagreement. One by one, he interviewed the book club members, each reflecting their perspective through lenses of hurt and anger. Voices raised in anger during their last meeting haunted them still, the echoes of their arguments replaying in their minds. Robert stood at the threshold of the intricate web of human emotion and social dynamics, his instincts pulling him deeper. It became clear Margaret was not just a beloved librarian. She was a linchpin around which many attached their identity. Each revelation painted a broader picture, suggesting that her death was not a random act of violence, but perhaps the culmination of a conflict hidden beneath the town's tranquil facade. The investigation had only just begun, but each conversation tore at the fabric of the town, revealing a darkness that had been cleverly concealed beneath layers of ordinary life. The dead ends. Days turned into weeks as Detective Roberts wrestled with the intricacies of Margaret's life, the investigation spiraling into a labyrinth of dead ends. Each lead, once brimming with potential, began to dissolve into smoke. The DNA results from the coffee cup had returned inconclusive, leaving no tracino comfort of evidence upon which to base any hope. He revisited the book club members, their alibis meticulously confirmed, each one stark and unwavering. There was Emily, who had ranted passionately about the renovation project, but was later found at home with her partner the night of the murder, a fact corroborated by several neighbors. Then there was Tom, who maintained a steady presence but had been out of town for a family matter. As each hour passed, the mounting frustration transformed into a shadow, lingering over Roberts like an unwelcome companion. Back at his desk, he ran through the notes he had taken, flipping through pages of interviews and articles detailing Margaret's final days. She had become more reclusive, yes, but had she truly feared for her life? Or had she simply been overwhelmed by the encroaching world outside her library? There was no answer in the ink, only a widening chasm of uncertainty. Roberts found himself returning to the library, the place that had stolen a sanctuary from the town through its violent rift. He wandered the aisles, running his fingers over the spines of the books, absorbing the silence that now felt less like solace and more like mourning. Beside a tall shelf, he spotted a mismatched book, its spine cracked and slightly askew. Curiosity piqued. He pulled it from its resting place and discovered it had been checked out last by Margaret herself. The title struck him as odd. Secrets Beneath. The perfect cover for the town, both literally and figuratively, where secrets thrived in the quiet corners. Roberts flipped the pages, his eyes scanning for annotations or symbols that might hint at deeper meaning, perhaps something worth pursuing. But as he read, the chapters only performed theatrics of fiction, embodying romantic betrayals and hidden motives. It was a distraction, nothing more than a reflection of the chaos swirling in his mind. He left the library defeated, the weight of missed signals heavy on his shoulders. The leads had run dry. Everything felt futile. And yet, a thread pulled at Hema, nagging feeling that the key to unraveling this case lay somewhere within the tapestry of Margaret's life. A cold rain began to fall, each drop striking the pavement in a rhythm that resembled the heartbeat of the town, steady, yet masked in unease. Roberts knew it was time to rethink his approach. Time to dig deeper into the lives firmly rooted in secrecy. As it appeared, the answers might hide in the places where the light rarely shone. A break in the case. The rain had soaked the town overnight, transforming the streets into shimmering pools of uncertainty. Detective Roberts stared out his office window, the curtains drawn to block the dreariness outside. His mind was ablaze with threads of new thoughts, inspiring the glimmer of hope he had nearly surrendered. He had realized that perhaps Margaret's isolation had been more than just a choice. It might have been a form of protection against whispers that twined like serpents through the town's narrative. Deciding to re-examine his previous interviews, he reached out to Sarah, the college student who had first opened his eyes to the fractures in Margaret's relationship. They met that afternoon at a small cafe, where the scent of coffee and pastries filled the air, reminiscent of the warmth Margaret had brought into every conversation. "Sarah, do you remember any mention of Jennifer?" he asked. Leaning forward, the name had cropped up in several conversations, a shadowy figure who had seemingly drifted away from the circle after the heated book club meeting. Jennifer, he seemed to disagree with Margaret about everything, Sarah recalled, her brows knitting together. "After the argument, I think she felt ostracized. I haven't seen her since." Roberts felt the faintest flicker of understanding ignite within him. He was beginning to see Jennifer as a thread worth pulling. "Do you know where I might find her?" "Last I heard, she had relocated to a nearby town. Something about wanting a fresh start after the fallout." Taking this lead, Roberts made a quick trip down the twisting roads to the neighboring town. He found Jennifer in a quaint home that radiated an air of new beginnings. As he approached the front door, he rehearsed the questions in his mind, resolved to unravel the emotions that must have haunted her since Margaret's death. When Jennifer reluctantly opened the door, the hesitation was palpable. Her eyes, once bright with passion for literature, now seemed dulled by regret. Roberts introduced himself and asked if he could ask her a few questions. Reluctantly in, the air thick with unspoken tension. "I wasn't involved in her death," she exclaimed defensively as soon as Roberts broached the subject of Margaret's murder. "I never wished her any harm. I just wanted to be heard." But her insistence only deepened Robert's suspicions. There was something in her tone that hinted at more unresolved issues. As he probed deeper, exploring her grievances against Margaret, Jennifer's vulnerability spilled forth like long-contained floodwaters. Buried beneath her stories was a troubling confession, a vague threat, a moment of rage that grew from feeling unheard. By the time he left, Roberts felt a sense of purpose rekindled within him. The pieces were still scattered across a vast canvas, but he now had direction. Sarah had provided the string. Jennifer had pulled it taut. The very foundation of the community, its silence, its fears, was beginning to unravel. As the rain slowed and the clouds began to part, Roberts wondered whether this was the light piercing through the dark veil of secrecy that enveloped the town. All he needed now was to piece together how far Jennifer's emotions had spiraled, and whether they linked to a night that cloaked the truth in shadow. The suspect. With renewed vigor, Detective Roberts returned to his office, the flickering fluorescent lights overhead contrasting sharply with the clarity he had just uncovered. He knew he had to approach the next phase of the investigation carefully. Jennifer's emotional turmoil had become a vibrant tapestry of motives, woven with threads of rejection, envy, and regret. Yet, the question loomed larger than ever. Was she capable of murder? That evening, Roberts called a meeting with his team to discuss the evolving profile of a new suspect. Gathered around the table, he laid out the evidence, a web of connections that painted a portrait of a woman deeply rattled by her perceived ostracism. Jennifer had been consumed by feelings of anger after her conflict with Margaret Taylor. Last discordant note in a once harmonious friendship. One of his colleagues, Officer Davis, spoke up. But is there anything concrete linking her to the scene? We can't rush to conclusions just based on emotion. Roberts understood the dissent but persisted, detailing the fragility of relationships in small towns. The passion for literature they once shared had transmuted into a bond, laced with betrayal. She had a motive, Roberts insisted, and an emotional outburst during their altercation could easily have spiraled into something irreversible. With her name now firmly etched into their minds, the team brainstormed ways to delve deeper into Jennifer's life. They reviewed records for any additional encounters she may have had with Margaret leading up to the tragedy. Surprisingly, they revealed a series of angry emails exchanged between the two women, laced with accusation and resentment. When push had come to shove during the renovation debates, it appeared Jennifer had felt not just dismissed, but violated. The team was adamant about finding witnesses or evidence to support their theory, leading them to look into Jennifer's whereabouts on the night Margaret was killed. They discovered a local resident who recalled seeing a figure resembling Jennifer near the library after hours, but could not confirm it due to poor visibility. Nevertheless, it was a lead that pushed their inquiry into overdrive. As Roberts prepared to confront Jennifer again, he knew he must thread a delicate balance. He needed her to unravel and reveal the truth, not just for the sake of the investigation, but for her own healing. The next day, he planned to pay her another visit, armed with the newly compiled evidence and the conviction that the emotional scars she bore might expose the greater depths of her pain. Meanwhile, deep in the recesses of his thoughts lingered a troubling notion. Was Jennifer merely a harbinger of Margaret's demise, or could she have entangled others in her spiral of despair? As the clouds pushed aside to reveal the sun, Roberts felt the weight of the truth closing in around him, beckoning him forward. The still waters of the community ran deeper, and beneath them lay hidden eddies of dark secrets waiting to be unveiled. The trial, months of investigation, culminated in a tense silence as doors creaked open at the county courthouse, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The trial of Jennifer Collins was set to begin, drawing the town into its tight embrace like moths to a flickering flame. Citizen curiosity intermingled with grief, intertwining their communal psyche with a knot of emotions too complex to unravel. Detective Roberts sat in the back row, absent-mindedly tracing a fingertip across the well-worn pads of his notepad, his heart heavy with the weight of what brought them all here. Jennifer appeared at the front, stark and small against the towering backdrop of the courtroom. Each step she took echoed with the finality of a fate already heavily draped in shadows. She wore her emotions like a specter, mix of defiance and weariness clinging to her weary frame. As the proceedings commenced, the prosecution laid out its case. They highlighted the heated exchanges between Jennifer and Margaret, her outbursts revealing a deep-seated resentment that had boiled over into violence. The damning emails and witness testimonies painted her as an unstable foursome who had felt scorned and bitter, capable of snapping in a moment of vulnerability turned rage. Roberts followed closely, remembering that intimate conversation with Jennifer in her home, the turbulent emotions spilling out before him like an open wound. It pained him to hear words that hinted at just how deeply hurt she had been, but also how destructive her pain had become. He had seen the depths of love and friendship spiral into something grotesque throughout his career. Yet this particular unfolding felt devastatingly personal. The defense took their turn, attempting to present a picture of Jennifer as a victim of circumstance rather than the perpetrator of crime. They decried the investigation as biased, filled with assumptions that led to scapegoating, meticulously crafting a narrative of lost friendships rather than deadly rivalries. The courtroom buzzed with murmurings, a pendulum swinging wildly between guilt and innocence. Roberts felt the tension ripple through the audience. Hundreds of eyes trained on the narrow path of justice. Would they find truth within the pain, or would the fabric of their shared life unravel, leaving the town a fragmented reflection of what it once was? As the trial entered its final days, Jennifer took the stand, her face pale yet resolute. She exhibited flashes of vulnerability and frustration, a woman desperate to reclaim her narrative while confronting the echoes of loss she could no longer ignore. Roberts felt his heart sink as she spoke, her words fraught with turmoil. "I loved her," Jennifer confessed, her voice trembling but steady. "Not in a romantic way, but as a friend. I never meant for it to end this way. The fight was never just about books or renovations. It was about feeling unseen, unheard. And when it all imploded, I couldn't see the line between anger and resolve. With each testimony, the evidence contested the premises of both guilt and innocence. As deliberations began, Roberts sat quietly in the shadows, reflecting on the complex web spun throughout the investigation. He had sought the truth, the kind of truth that could heal rather than harm, but the outcome remained locked in the hands of a jury. Days passed like echoes in a canyon. With each tick of the clock reverberating in his mind, he quietly grappled with his own sorrow burden, not just of justice, but of compassion for the human experience that lay bare before him. This trial was about more than law. It was a collective confrontation of sorrow, betrayal, and the intricate tapestry that bound them all as members of the same small town. Finally, the hour arrived. The jury emerged, and a hush settled over the room. Roberts held his breath, the weight of expectation laying heavy on his lungs. Whatever the verdict, he understood now the questions of morality often swelled louder than the answers. Whether or not justice would be served, every heart in that room would carry the story forward, a haunting reminder of lives intertwined and the profound loss of a beloved librarian. The aftermath. The gavel's firm rap echoed through the courtroom, jolting every occupant from their anxious reverie. The jury's verdict hung in the air like a portentous cloud, obscuring the reality of what was to come. Detective Roberts sat motionless, his eyes focused intently on Jennifer as the judge read the decision, guilty of manslaughter. As the words reverberated through the solemn room, a murmur swept through the audience, gasps of surprise, cries of disbelief, and a few voices raised in quiet anger. Jennifer's face drained of color, her expression a mix of resignation and longing. It was a loss for everyone, a life reduced from the shadow of potential to the confines of a courtroom, now forever bound by a tragic decision. That evening, the town roiled with mixed emotion. The anticipation that had gripped the community for months dissolved into schisms of opinion. Some embraced the ruling with a sense of relief, believing justice had been served. Others mourned the loss of two lives. Margaret's, taken too soon, and Jennifer's, now overshadowed by a future confined behind a prison bar. The sense of safety that had once enveloped the town felt threadbare, exposing vulnerabilities previously buried within the tightly knit community. Robert spent sleepless nights mulling over the trial's outcome. Though he had hoped for a resolution that could foster healing, the truth he had uncovered in the depths of the investigation felt hauntingly unresolved. Sure, a verdict had been reached, but it did little to bridge the divide the tragedy had created. In the following weeks, Roberts witnessed how the trial had begun to transform the town's dynamics. Friends became estranged, and whispers grew more venomous. The library was shuttered, a ghostly reminder of the life Margaret had once breathed into the community, now eclipsed by a profound sense of loss. People passed the building with averted eyes, as if looking too closely might unearth the truths they chose to ignore. With this haunting chapter still fresh, Robert sought out those willing to remember Margaret in meaningful ways. He organized a memorial at the town square, gathering to honor her legacy and the brightness she had once shared. As residents came together, sharing stories and laughter, he noted the bittersweet air. Their memories were tender, yet each echoed the absence of their shared history. Days turned into weeks, and while the wounds were slow to heal, the gathering marked the beginning of something greater, a chance for catharsis. The community slowly acknowledged the hurt, but also began rebuilding the fragile bonds that had once held them together. In the months that followed, Roberts embraced an evolving sense of purpose. Determined to protect the town he called home, he worked closely with local leaders, advocating for new outreach programs that would provide emotional support for those navigating grief and anger, transforming the darkness that enveloped them into a foundation of healing. Jennifer's fate became a reminder of the fragility of relationships, the power of words, and the unforeseen consequences of emotions spiraled unchecked. In the aftermath of tragedy, Roberts learned that vigilance was not just about maintaining order. It was about fostering connection and understanding within an intricate web of human experience. As the seasons changed, the sun began to break through the heavy clouds that had lingered for so long, painting the town in hues of resilience and hope. Memories of Margaret intertwined with new stories, weaving a tapestry of healing that bound the community, gradually illuminating the path forward. It was not a clear road, nor a perfect story. It was simply life fractured yet enduring in its pursuit of truth, connection, and the quiet strength to carry on despite it all. Reflection. In the quiet aftermath of the trial, Detective Samuel Roberts often found himself walking along the twisting paths of the town's central park. The trees stood sentinel, their branches heavy with the changing colors of fall, their fallen leaves carpeting the ground in a tapestry of gold and rust. He pondered the journey that had led him here, the lives intertwined like the roots of those old trees, each bearing the weight of stories untold. As he strolled, he revisited moments from the investigation faces, etched with grief, anger, and sorrow. Margaret's laughter had once breathed life into the library, a place bursting with a vibrant community spirit. Yet now, as he passed the shuttered windows, he felt the pangs of questions left unanswered. Justice had been sought, yet it was bittersweet, casting long shadows that stretched across the town, like dusk approaching a fleeting day. He recognized that true closure was elusive. The heart's scars of loss didn't simply vanish. They settled into the fabric of life, teaching lessons infused with bittersweet wisdom. Each person he encountered now became a reminder of both sorrow and strength, inescapably intertwined in their shared humanity. Robert's thoughts shifted to Jennifer, the woman whose life had unraveled so publicly. Despite the trial's verdict, he couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her tragic narrative, a reflection of how far anger could lead one astray. He had learned that wounds, though visible, bore souls that cried out for understanding. As winter approached, he envisioned the possibilities of rekindled community ties, how conversations ignited by shared grieving could crystallize into something more profound. He had witnessed the transformative nature of remembrance, the healing that came when honest stories intertwined. Each memory, steeped in laughter and lessons, created a stronger community, forged not just in sorrow, but in resilience. The town, though forever marked, began to pulse with newfound energy. Neighbors stretched hands across divides, closing gaps formed by misunderstanding. Roberts took solace in the idea that stories continued to evolve. What began in pain could blossom into hope, providing fertile ground for healing in one heart and then another. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the park. It seemed almost poetic to Robert, this passage of time, the way healing flowed through life like a river, sometimes turbulent, sometimes calm, always moving forward. With a determined heart, he regarded the future as a boundless tapestry, where the legacy of loss could inspire a new narrative of understanding, compassion, and connection among those who remain.